Everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in this evening for our first ever virtual town hall. My name is Anna Tovar. I'm the commissioner at the Arizona Corporation Commission, and definitely want to thank you for tuning in on this very important subject. We have many of our presenters that are here today. And again, the goal today is to help educate residents in the West Valley that live near Luke Air Force Base that have had issues with tainted water around the base. Very grateful for those that are participating today to be speakers, and also for your presence online as well too. I know as customers and West Valley residents, you're concerned and you want answers and definitely want to be educated about what this forever chemical can possibly do. So again, today is our first virtual town hall. I first want to kick it off to Chairman Marcus Peterson to say a few words. She is the chairwoman at the Arizona Corporation Commission. Chairwoman?
Thank you, Commissioner Tovar. It's an honor to join you tonight in this very important discussion. Thank you so much to the speakers and to the public for weighing in tonight. And thank you, Commissioner Tovar, for your leadership on this issue. So I will be happy to listen in and to take notes and appreciate the work you've done tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'm glad to have your support. And again, I know that you are equally passionate about making sure that we're educating our constituents all over the state of Arizona. I want to introduce some of our presenters tonight, and I'm very thankful for them to be on. We have Director Cabrera. He's from the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. Trevor Major, also Water Quality Division Director at the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us this evening. Brian Thomas is our Chief Financial Officer from Valley Utilities Water Company and from Tierra Buena Water Company. And we have Steve Wing on behalf, he's actually an attorney representing Valley Utilities and Tierra Buena, and Matthew Garlick from Liberty Utilities as well too. So I'll just say that we did invite Luke Air Force Base, and they declined the offer to attend. We were able to submit some actual questions to them, and they answered a few of them. So I'll go ahead and just say a little bit about it as well too, about the questions I prompted and their responses as well too. But for those that are viewing on our YouTube feed, you'll see an actual email that you can actually click on, and you can prompt for any question that you have in real time. And we'll get those questions to you, and we'll make sure that we answer them as well too. So right now, I'll go over the questions that we asked Luke Air Force Base. I asked, what date will the short-term fixes of PFAS in wells from private companies be completed? Base originally stated it would be sometime in April of 2021. Their answer was the Air Force is working with Valley Utilities and Maricopa County in installing a remedial system at the Bethany Hills VHW location. The contract has been awarded. The estimated time frame is about 3 to 4 months, but we are working with all parties to expedite the project. Second question was, when will free bottled water distribution end? The Air Force, here's the answer. The Air Force started distributing alternative drinking water on the February 23rd this year, and will continue to provide alternative drinking water until the remedial system is installed, tested, and connected to the wells at the Bethany home well. Next question was, how have any of the wells on Luke Air Force Base exceeded the 70 parts per trillion? If so, what remedies have been applied? The Luke's answer was the drinking water for Luke Air Force Base has tested and results were below the EPA lifetime health advisory. And last question was, will Luke Air Force Base commit to working with ADEQ to share all test results for PFOA, PFOS spread around the base, and share the plume location information and contain past, future, spread, and expedited solutions? The Air Force answer was Air Force has been working with ADEQ on this project and will continue to work and collaborate with ADEQ, Maricopa County, and the EPA. Our team will continue to work with local and federal regulators to share the results and evaluate the next phase. So again, that was from Shimmy Matthew. She's representing Luke Air Force Base. And so again, saddened that they couldn't attend tonight, but at least we got a couple of questions answered. I first also want to introduce, we have another commissioner on the line, Commissioner Kennedy. Commissioner Kennedy, if you'd like to unmute and just say a few words. Okay, Commissioner Kennedy, whenever you can, if you would like to unmute and say a few words, please know that you're welcome to. And again, thank you for your support here for this town hall for the residents out by Luke Air Force Base. Right now, we're going to go to Brian Thomas and Steve Lean of Valley Utilities Water Company and Tierra Buena Water Company. Gentlemen, if you can just kind of, give the residents that are tuning in right now in the West Valley, just a historical perspective of your company and how the PFASs have affected your water wells and what's been done to this date.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Tovar, first of all, thank you for inviting us. We appreciate the opportunity to have this forum to speak with the public and explain what the position of both Tierra Buena and Valley Utilities are. These companies have existed in the West Valley since the 70s, early 80s, and obviously we care about our community and we want to provide safe drinking water for the public. We first learned about the PFAS issue from our friend, Mr. Matthew Garlick from Liberty, informally, who explained several years ago that this issue may be coming up and that Valley should take a look at it and test its wells. We understand from the early testing that it was an issue that we had one well that would test higher than the lifetime health advisory of 70 parts per trillion. Of course, we were concerned at that time. We looked to the Air Force, who in 2017 came out and said that they were going to start to aggressively evaluate the system, start looking for the PFAS, and treat if necessary. Back in 2018, ADEQ began looking at this as well, started testing around Luke Air Force Base, and then in the community as it grew out is our understanding. At that time, ADEQ came and tested the two wells that were closest to Luke Air Force Base, which made sense, and we had non-detective PFAS at those locations. What has come to be known now with additional testing by both Air Force, Valley, Tierra Buena, and Liberty as well, it seems like the point of the constituents that are most concerning is not actually very close to Luke Air Force Base, but is about a mile away from it, about 2 miles away from it. So that is the point of concern. Recently, about 3 months ago, in cooperation with the Air Force, who did additional testing, we learned that there were 3 wells in the Bethany well site, which is, as I said before, about 2 miles away, that have elevated levels of PFAS that are above 70. Those wells have been taken offline, and we are now working with both Liberty and the Air Force to provide alternative sources of water. One of the alternative sources of water for our customers is bottled water, which is being provided by free at the Air Force's expense. The other issue and the other source of water that we've just worked out with and we appreciate is Liberty has agreed to provide up to 300 gallons per minute up until at least June 1st, so that people can have water that does not exceed the 70 parts per trillion threshold through their own fountains and through their own homes and pipes. So we think that is a good thing. We're going to try to keep our wells offline as long as we can, to meet demand. So if I have any questions, I'm happy to answer those, but we do want to stress that our understanding is working with the Air Force is that they are going to have at least temporary treatment installed. I heard 3 months to 4 months today. That's a little bit longer than what we'd heard before, but we were hoping it was in May, but it sounds like it may be June according to the newest estimates. I did my math right. But we've also worked with Maricopa County Environmental Services to expedite the approval of not only the temporary, but the permanent water solution here so we can have treatment. And that's where we are. And of course, we've pledged to keep everybody notified. We're going to continue to provide notices of what's going on and make sure that all of the material changes, or if anything comes to light, that we share it with our customers. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I now want to go and just say again, we have another commissioner that has joined us, Commissioner Justin Olson. Commissioner Olson, if you'd just like to unmute and say a few words, glad to have you on.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner Tovar. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you putting together this town hall. I think this is a very, very important topic, and I appreciate this opportunity for us to have the communication between both the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, from the utilities, from the Air Force, from everybody that's involved, and most importantly, to hear from the public. So this is a very critical issue, and so I appreciate the efforts that have been put forward by both Commissioner Tovar and each of the participants here today, so that we can share this important information with the public and then most importantly hear from the public as well. So I appreciate the opportunity to participate. I apologize for being a little bit late. I was unfortunately signed in to the listen only line, but I was able to hear what was going on, but wasn't able to share any words with you. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to introduce myself.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Olson. I'm going to go next to Matthew Garlick, so he can talk a little bit about his company, Liberty, that is in close range as well to Luke Air Force Base. But before that, just for those on the line that have not heard about PFAS, or they're probably wondering, what is that acronym? Or what is it? It's actually a group of man-made chemicals that research and military documents show and that are hazardous and toxic. The PFAS are a class of synthetic chemicals that are silently widespread and persistent in our environment and are highly toxic. And this type of chemical, PFAS and the PFOA, has been used in what was a fire retardant at Air Force bases all across the country because their ability to repel oil and water and stay persistent at high temperatures. So that chemical was used again at Air Force bases all across the country starting in the early 1970s and then probably ended somewhere in the early 2000s as well too. So a lot has been done in regards to research to this toxic type of chemical. And you'll probably potentially hear stories on the news in regards to people who served as military firefighters that are now battling cancer. In fact, yesterday at the United States Congress, there was actually a subcommittee on military, and they were discussing this exact issue on bases that are now inactive across the country, and stated that the DoD and the Pentagon have now come forward of saying that there's probably over 600 facilities across the country that they're actually trying to study in regards to this type of level being high. So next, I'll kick it off to Matthew, and you can tell us a little bit about your company and your experience with PFAS and what you've done as a company as well.
Thank you, and good afternoon. Hopefully everyone can hear me. My name is Matthew Garlick. I am president of Liberty Utilities in Arizona. I'd like to say thank you, Chairwoman Leah Marcus Peterson and commissioners for allowing Liberty the opportunity to discuss PFAS tonight. A little bit about our history. We've been in the Litchfield Park area since the late 1920s, and became a utility around 1956. So we've been around the area for quite a long time and been a neighbor to Valley Utilities, in which has been affected, as well as Liberty over the years. As part of that, as part of our UCMR uncontaminated monitoring role of 3, that was done by the EPA in 2013 and 2015, Liberty Utilities was selected to have several of its wells be reviewed for emerging contaminants that might be present in the aquifer. On May 11th of 2016, I received a phone call from United States EPA informing us, as well as several other members, that they had detected PFAS and PFOA inside of 2 of our wells. Fortunately, one of those wells was offline for several years. The other had not come online as a service. And as part of that, on the 17th, a couple of days later, we actually put together a blending program to make sure that our levels were lower than what the EPA was estimating the new level to be at that time was of May 17th, 2016 was 100 ppt. Several days later, on the 18th, we were informed that the level would now go down to 70 ppt. The utility then made a new blending adjustment to that new proposed number. And on May 25th of 2016, the United States EPA issued to the filing that the PFOA and PFOS would be at 70 parts per trillion for the lifetime health advisory. As part of that, and as you can imagine, as surprised as we were when we found out this information, we immediately moved forward to begin whatever method we could do as advised by the state of Arizona, ADEQ, and as well as the EPA. We were provided 3 options at that time. And to remind you, this was 2.5 months just shy of our peak beginning season for serving about 17,000 customers in the West Valley. We serve the communities of Litchfield Park, City of Goodyear, some Avondale areas, and Maricopa unincorporated areas. As part of that, we brought on some temporary GAC, granular activated carbon treatment for our wells over the next couple of months, and then ultimately began and started putting together some permanent treatment, which was installed a year later. We immediately notified the commission of the issue. We docketed some compliance issue with the commission during that time to inform them of this issue and its occurrence. And with the help of staff from the Arizona Corporation Commission and the commissioners at the time, we were able to move forward and make sure that everything was done in a manner that we thought was appropriate for our community, not knowing what health risk this would pose. With that, today, in working with the United States Air Force Base and the Valley, we, as indicated earlier by Steve Wynn and Brian Thomas, who will talk later, we are aiding the group of folks with an interconnect for water to help them through their current crisis. And we currently have treatment on our wells that are affected and currently are providing our customers with water that are but below the standard of the 70 ppt of the lifetime health advisory. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Matthew, and thank you, Liberty, as well, too. A lot of great information, and I just want to thank you again for everything that you're doing for your customers out in the West Valley near the base, as well, too, in being proactive to bring forward solutions to your customers so that they have clean and reliable water. And also in regards to the interconnector, so that is a great solution that has come to fruition with Liberty and Valley Utilities, so that those levels the water is then blended and those levels are going a lot lower than 70 parts per trillion. And so hopefully soon you'll be hearing, we'll take some questions pretty soon, but for those on YouTube that are listening, right underneath the screen, you would actually see if you want to submit any questions, and if you were to put that in a browser, it would prompt you to enter your first, last name. It's optional, and then ask your question. We have some questions already that are coming in, but just wanted to remind anyone that was seeing us on YouTube is that you can have that link so that you can ask a question, and we'll get them here in real time as well too. So we're piling up some questions now, but please continue to send in your questions. Thank you. Next, we're going to go to Director Cabrera, and he can talk a little bit about PFAS and what is happening on the state in regards to the Department of Environmental Quality. They're doing some amazing work across Arizona in regards to this issue. So I'm going to hand it over to Director Cabrera.
Thank you, Commissioner Tovar, and it's a pleasure to be invited to this meeting. Trevor and our water quality team, as well as our team in the Waste Programs Division, have been working on PFAS issues since 2016. Now, although it's an unregulated compound and we don't have strict authority, legal authority to enforce, we have been working on issues for quite a while. We have worked with over 10 systems across the state on a voluntary basis to address PFAS issues and bring any concentrations that they might have down below the health advisory level. We have also conducted sampling of various locations in Marana and Tucson. We have worked with City of Tucson and Department of Defense officials near the Tucson area remediation project northwest of the Tucson International Airport area to get folks who had private drinking water wells that were impacted by PFAS connected to city wells. We've worked with the City of Tucson not only to shut down some of their wells, but also to investigate the PFAS plume that is headed towards the northwest of an area near Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. In fact, we've dedicated $3.3 million worth of our water quality assurance revolving fund this year to identify the groundwater contamination in that area and stop the plume from spreading. So our strategy generally has been where we discover that folks may be drinking this water, we work on a voluntary basis with the drinking water system in order to figure out a way to deliver water that does not exceed the health advisory level. That's the first priority. The second priority is to try to identify what are the sources of the PFAS contamination and try to stop it as soon as we can. In Tucson, we're actually mobilizing drill rigs, installing monitoring wells. We have defined a plume to the northwest of Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, and we're currently designing a treatment plant so that we can extract the water, treat it, and then dispose of it into a storm sewer so that the contamination underground doesn't continue to propagate. Many of our public water systems in the state of Arizona use groundwater as their source water. So item number one is that we work with the drinking water systems on a voluntary basis to try to address issues of PFAS. And then a very close second priority is to work on stopping those plumes. And so we're very interested in making sure that additional drinking water systems don't receive source waters that are contaminated, and that's part of the work that we're doing in Tucson. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Director, as well too, and great work out in Tucson, and hopefully even more in regards to Luke Air Force Base as well too. I know many people, residents that have contacted my office are concerned in regards to, what are the potential effects in regards to exposure, long-term exposure, and, want to make the most educated and best choice for their families. And so I know that those are some of the concerns as well, too. But thank you again for everything that you're doing, and also wanted to ask Trevor if you wanted to add anything as well too, of just more educational informational to the residents that are listening in today to our virtual town hall.
Thank you, Commissioner. And the only thing that I would add above and beyond what Director Cabrera has indicated would be that, yes, we're working with Tucson and the Phoenix area. We're actually doing a statewide screen because we want to know statewide what's happening in Arizona with regards to PFAS. So that includes, we've identified in 2018, we did a study statewide, identified the higher risk sites and went and sampled those areas. There's a report on ADEQ's website that provides the results of that. We have also undertaken currently an additional assessment that we're doing statewide, including in the Luke Air Force Base area, where we will be doing our own sampling of public water systems over the next few weeks.
That is great. Thank you. Thank you again, Trevor. Thank you so much. We do have some questions, so I'm going to start with questions, and I appreciate those that are on listening to us on our virtual town hall of being able to submit their questions in real time. And I'll go to a couple, and if there's any that resonate that anyone could answer, please chime in. We got a first question from John. After 18 years of exposure, what medical issues may I face in the future in regards to PFAS?
So I'll take a stab at that one. The first thing I'll say is that I'm not a medical professional. I'm an engineer. So the best thing that people can do is consult their physician and talk to them about it. There's information about potential effects on the EPA website. They include things like increased cholesterol. In some cases, there's also been some indications that other medical conditions can occur. This is a bad chemical. It's a serious chemical, but it is not the most toxic chemical that we deal with. Not to minimize its effects, but for those of you that have been around environmental issues since the 1980s, things like trichloroethylene and perchloroethylene actually have worse health effects than this, but those health effects are explained in great detail on the EPA websites. We also have some information on our website. There is again, things like elevated cholesterol. There is some organ damage that may be possible, and there's even the possibility of some cancers. So what we recommend to everybody, if they're concerned, is that they consult their doctor, have a conversation with them about it. It's really important to understand that this is one of many emerging chemicals that the EPA and others are studying right now. The fact of the matter is that we use a lot of chemicals in our manufacturing and chemical industries in the United States. And there's many of those chemicals that we're just starting to study right now. So any particular condition that someone may have is very difficult to tie directly in a causality fashion to any particular chemical. But the best answers for all of it come from your medical doctor, and then looking at the health studies that are located at EPA. There's also the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, ATSDR. And they have a lot of toxicological information. Folks can Google ATSDR on the website. Once you get to that website, you'll be able to put in PFAS compounds and get a listing of all the potential health effects and uses for those chemicals. So that's the best answer I can give. Unfortunately, I'm not a medical doctor or professional. What we try to do at DEQ is compare levels to guidance levels and standards, and then address those issues to those standards as much as we can.
Thank you, Director Cabrera, for the great information and also resources that consumers can go to look for a little bit more information on it. I want to introduce Commissioner Jim O'Connor. He has joined us on the line and would pass it over to Commissioner O'Connor to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Tovar. I just wanted to give you my most sincere compliments and highest praise for taking the lead on this critically important issue to our fellow constituents here in the West Valley. So thanks so much. You're doing a very excellent job, and you have my complete support in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you again, Commissioner O'Connor, and thank you for joining us as well too. I also just wanted to follow up on that first question in regards to what Director Cabrera had mentioned in regards to studies from the EPA. I actually have their little awesome fact sheet, and just wanted to read from it directly in saying that exposure to PFOA, PFOS over certain levels may result in adverse health effects, including developmental effects to fetus during pregnancy or to breastfed infants. Example, low birth weight, accelerated puberty, skeletal variations, cancers from testicular to kidney, liver effects, tissue damage, immune effects, antibody production and immunity, thyroid effects, and other effects in regards to also cholesterol changes. So again, a lot of information that is out there, but I would say the EPA has done some studies as well too, but also great advice from Director Cabrera is always consulting your doctor as well too, and can possibly provide some blood test in regards to it as well. We'll go to our next question, and it is where would I need to get more information from Liberty or Valley Water? So I'll hand it off to Valley Waters first, and then after that, Liberty.
Yes, Commissioner Tovar, this is Brian.
Yeah, hi, Commissioner Trevor. Brian Thomas here. I just want to say thanks for having this tonight. Great to be a part of this. I just want to let everybody know that on our website, buwco.com, that's BUWCO.com, we do have a notices tab at the top that we're posting all the information of the original notice that we sent out to our customers back in 2016 is there, as well as the letter and the information that the Air Force Base mailed out back in February. And then also the notice that we just sent out recently, earlier this month, and we will continue to, any other future notices or any information will be posted to that site as well. And you can also, contact our office if you have any questions directly too. Thank you.
Thank you. Matthew, you want to talk about Liberty?
Yeah, and you could go to our website, www.liberty.com, and it would be under the Litchfield Park or the Avondale location. You could type in under search bar PFOA, PFAS. That's been on there for several years. It talks a little bit about it and its health effects and that. So that's where I would go to get information from us. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for those that are watching and sending your great questions. I'll continue on with them as well. How does this water, in regards to the tainted water, affect our animals? I know I have a couple of fur babies that are really dear to us. I know many people watching, their animals are just like family as well too. So does anyone want to take this question on?
Commissioner Tovar, I don't know. I'd imagine that there's similar effects to animals, but I actually don't know. I haven't done any reading on the particular issue.
Thank you. We'll go to another question from Karen. May we know the location of all affected wells and what levels of contaminants are at each well? And will home testing be done? And this was for Valley Utilities to be answered.
Hi, Commissioner Tovar. Brian Thomas here. Yes, we have 3 wells that have tested above the 70 parts per trillion. Those are at our Bethany Hills West well site, is what we refer to it as. Like we mentioned earlier, it's about 2 miles east of the Air Force Base. Thank you.
Thank you. Another great question in regards to the history of the danger levels were detected over 10 years ago. Why were options not started to avoid long-term exposure from Valley Utilities and from Liberty? So maybe if you can both address it. And I know you did in the beginning, but these might be maybe some that are just tuning in right now.
Commissioner Tovar, this is Steve Wing. Thank you again for the question. Briefly, the first detect that we found out about, and again, I want to thank Liberty for informally explaining to Valley that this is an issue in the local aquifer, because otherwise we would have never known. So we appreciate that. The testing that we first did was in mid 2016. And it came back with a second round of testing, and we found that 1 well at that time exceeded the 70 parts per trillion. That's 1 out of the 5 wells. Now, okay, so we sent the notice out. We provided the notice to the public at that time. Moving forward, we also looked at this from a standpoint of what was the Air Force doing and what was the Air Force saying at the time. Well, the pledge was from the Air Force is that they were going to aggressively identify, define, and respond to the problem. And we believe that was true. Back in 2018, in January of 2018, ADQ came out and tested the Valley wells again. And so during this time, we saw progress being made. And at that point, Valley had to look at this and think, what is the cost? What are we looking at? And how can this get done immediately as quickly as possible? For Valley to go through and get the financing, all the administrative issues and the cost it was going to be bearing, it was going to take Valley an estimated 2 to 3 years to get the treatment in place under normal procedures. Valley felt at the time that it was going to be much quicker and easier for the Air Force to do it, which they had already pledged to do. So honestly, I think everybody on the telephone call here today and listening in would say it's been quite a while since 2016, but that entire time, Valley was looking at this saying the Air Force can do this quicker, easier, much less expense than what Valley would have to incur and its customers would have to incur. So we have been working with the Air Force to make this happen, and we're really happy that they're moving forward now, because at the end of the day, what we want to see is this treatment and this water, treated and cleaned up as quickly as possible. We're glad the Air Force is doing it now. I can be honest with you and tell you that, Valley does wish, like its customers, that this aggressive approach had been taken sooner, but that didn't happen. But again, we're thankful that the Air Force is moving forward now, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll hand it over to Matt.
Thank you. And maybe just to recap my opening statement, when Liberty Utilities became aware of it on May 11th of 2016, we immediately took action. We were very fortunate that one of our wells that had a higher level of contaminants in it was not online, and it did not return online until it was removed in the future. The other wells were blended well below 70 ppt, and we continue to deliver our water to our customers as per the health advisory levels that were provided by the EPA and ultimately the ADEQ. And so subsequently, treatment, either temporary or permanent, was added to those well sites, and Liberty, almost from day one, completely from day one, was delivering water that met those action levels.
Thank you, Matt. We'll go now to a question for DEQ. The question is, has DEQ requested assistance from the EPA, and will this site be recommended for a Superfund site?
Those are great questions. For us, how much assistance we ask from the EPA is a function of how fast we see Luke Air Force Base proceeding. Luke Air Force Base is a Department of Defense agency, and they have the best way to describe it, even if it's not exactly right on a legal basis, but the best way to describe it is that the Department of Defense gets to do their own cleanups. And for the most part, the states don't get to tell them what to do. And so they share their work plans with us. We certainly collaborate. But at the end of the day, we don't have as a state authority over the Department of Defense like we do over public water systems, for example. And so whether or not we invite EPA to provide assistance and authority really depends on the speed at which Luke Air Force Base continues to work. Right now, we're happy with the fact that they've worked with Valley Utilities to notify residents. We're happy with the fact that they've delivered bottled water. We're happy with the fact that they're going to install treatment within a matter of months. All of that is very, very commendable. Sometimes when you invite EPA, things can actually slow down a little bit. Entities sometimes start adding lawyers in all of the reviews, and there starts to be arguments over authorities and whether or not there's a legal standard and those kinds of things. So we're not immediately inviting EPA because of that, but we have had a conversation with them. They actually called us. They said that their enforcement person at Region 9 told me personally on the phone call that they have tools and authorities that we don't have at the state, and they'd be more than happy to help us if the need arises. Right now, for just a little while longer, we're looking to work with Luke Air Force Base directly. We're happy with the responses that they've had in terms of this particular issue at Valley Water Utilities. And so we're cautiously optimistic that progress will continue to be made on an accelerated basis, and that won't be necessary. In terms of the Superfund question, whether or not something becomes a Superfund site, in other words, whether or not it gets listed on the national priorities list for EPA, is completely EPA's a decision. And typically, they reserve that for the worst sites and the sites that require responsible parties to be forced into action. In this particular case, what we see is that Luke Air Force Base is responding. They're actually doing quite a bit of work already. We are asking them to accelerate that work in terms of identifying the groundwater plume and mitigating its spread. But a lot of those decisions are ultimately up to EPA. We have not asked for their help yet, simply because sometimes their mere presence slows things down. It's not that they want to slow things down, it's just that their mere presence slows things down. And so we're hopeful that Luke will continue its efforts and maybe even accelerate a bit so that we can solve this problem as expeditiously as possible.
Thank you, Director Cabrera. Another follow-up on that was in regards to what does 70 parts per trillion equal as a reference of comparison? So maybe a little bit about the 70 parts per trillion and what the EPA has identified as the lifelong health advisory.
Yeah, it's a tiny number. So a trillion is 12 zeros. So it's 1 trillion is a 1 with 12 zeros. If I were to start counting to a trillion in 1 second intervals, I wouldn't make it in my lifetime. So it's a really, really small number. To give a visual, it's 1 drop inside of 18 million gallons. So it's a very, very small number. And it is important to note that EPA has issued this health advisory level, but they haven't set a standard yet. And so the science is still developing. The other thing to note is that the 70 parts per trillion is a combination of, it's the sum of 2 compounds, PFOS and PFOA, which are both part of the family of compounds known as PFAS. And so the science and the health effects are continuing to develop, but it is a tiny number. It is 1 drop in 18 million gallons.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Going back to another question for Valley Waters, from communication was minimal. Why not have communication on bills versus a random letter not identified from a water company? Do we have
Yes, I apologize. I hit the wrong number. I hit the wrong button, Commissioner Tovar. I apologize. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure I understand the question, but we did send out the customer notice when we did discover it back in 2016. It has been posted on our website ever since that time. And any new customer that signed up since then also received a copy of the notice as well. I'm not sure, maybe I'm not understanding the question, but that, and then of course we have done the notice that the Air Force Base sent out their notice back in February, and then we did send a follow-up notice earlier this month as well.
Thank you. And just to follow up on that, do you have any plans to maybe have that communication on a bill? I know from my times as being mayor, if we had something important to put on, we usually put it in a big yellow box at the very top invoice, giving some, very important information. Is that something that you think your company will do?
Yeah, we do. Our bills are mailed on postcards. And of course, customers can also sign up for e-bill, which would be, a PDF that they could download. We can put messages on those postcards, and we are planning to put a message on there just referencing that notices will be mailed, because we always mail those separately, because obviously the postcard has limited space. And of course, anytime we mail out a notice, we will also post it on our website. So customers can always check back if they feel like they may have missed something. We always post the notice at the same time we mailed it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to another question is, do we have any specifics on the areas of the plume known thus far? Is it 1 mile, 3 miles, or 10 miles?
We're gathering that data right now. That's actually what we're trying to do right now, is collect all of the information that the base has, all of the information that the water companies have, and try to figure out what are the dimensions of the plume. It's also important to understand that while while Luke Air Force Base has not contested the fact that the PFAS contamination is coming from the base, they have not objected to that hypothesis. It's important to know that these compounds are ubiquitous. They get used in all kinds of things. In fact, if you're wearing a wrinkle-free piece of clothing right now, it might have PFAS compounds in it. And so while we talk about Luke Air Force Base and a plume, and we're doing that analysis right now, it's always important to understand that these compounds are ubiquitous, used in lots of different industries for lots of different purposes. And the best example I can think of is I have wrinkle-free shirts because I don't like to iron, and so they probably have PFAS compounds on them too. And so we believe that Luke Air Force Base is definitely a source in the area, but the investigatory work of other potential sources and the investigatory work of the size and dimensions of the plume is just starting right now. And so that's actually what we're encouraging Luke Air Force Base to accelerate. We're asking them to go off-site in a quicker fashion instead of focusing so much on-site. Just get yourself off-site, try to figure out what the plume dimensions are so that we can mitigate the spread. But there's a lot of investigatory work that has to be done. In Tucson, what we've done is we've installed 7 monitoring wells to try to figure out the dimensions. We did that after collecting available existing data. And just recently after about a year, did we define the extent of contamination. And so we're hopeful that Luke Air Force Base can do a similar thing in a similar schedule.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. Another question was, why so long before this first town hall, and why no medical physician included in the panel? I just want to say for myself, I learned about this issue. In fact, when I was watching 12 News, and it was Bran Resnick who reported on this issue, that was the first knowledge that I had. I then, contacted Chairwoman Marquez Peterson and asked if, we can join together as a commission, since we do oversee the private water companies here in the state of Arizona. And with that, Chairwoman Marquez Peterson put on the as an actual emergency meeting for us to learn a little bit more about this. And so we're hopeful to have another meeting in April as well too. The time that we had for the emergency meeting flew by super fast, and we didn't get to all stakeholders or more information as well too. So looking forward to that meeting, and we'll be sure to post when that meeting happens in April. But also for me, it was something, that, toxic chemicals has affected my life. And it was about 20 years ago when I was exposed to toxins that caused a rare type of leukemia for me. So I was a school teacher one day and the very next day fighting the battle of my life. So for me, when I heard about this issue and, different news organizations started to report on it, and when the base came out in regards to the bottled water, that's when I started, looking into it a little bit more. And from here, I invited the base, and all the other stakeholders as well too. And I do plan on having, more town halls as well too. And I wish we could be in person, where it works a little bit easier than virtually. But please know that you have my commitment to know that I'll continue on in trying to learn more facts and get constituents educated on this issue. And I will take your recommendation of having hopefully a medical doctor on the next one so he can answer, or he or she can answer questions that are health related as well too. So thank you for that question. I'll go to the next one. It's for Valley Utilities. What is the time frame for Valley Utilities to get levels below 70 parts per trillion? Well, what else is going to be offered to residents besides water delivery service?
Thank you, Commissioner Tovar. This is Steve Ween again. Currently, as we said earlier in our presentation, the water levels now are below 70 parts per trillion because what we've done is turned off the 3 wells at the Bethany well site that had the elevated levels of PFAS. So currently, right now, we're purchasing water from Liberty, which is treated and is under 70 parts per trillion. And the other 3 wells that we have online were all non-detect of PFAS. So right now, the water coming through your taps, should not be an issue. As far as permanent treatment, the Air Force, the last dates that we heard were in May, but it sounds like it's slipping to June from what was conveyed to your office earlier. And we believe that that's probably a temporary treatment that will become permanent, but we're working hard to expedite that proposal and engineering acceptance by the Maricopa County Environmental Services. And we are relatively sure that they're going to cooperate and expedite that. So from our perspective, we think that there's going to be a permanent solution in place, hopefully by as early as June, from the sounds of it.
And Commissioner Tovar, Brian Thomas here. I wanted to add too that we did just learn today that the Air Force Base, when they first started providing the bottled water, you could go to their site and pick up the bottled water. But evidently they were only doing that for the initial period of time to get customers set up. Now they've converted to just doing delivered bottled water only at this time. And I believe they're using Sparklet's water. I've heard something about that's joining them to get the water delivered. So my recommendation would be is if customers aren't getting the water or want to get the water, definitely give the Air Force a call, and they can get you set up with delivered bottled water to your home.
Thank you. I know my office was contacted today by a resident there at Valley Waters, where he originally had got set up with a cooler and some water, but has been having difficulties in having that water delivered again. So I'll make sure that we can follow up with him, that he contacts the base as well too, in making sure that he has bottled water. I don't want to miss what you stated in one of your answers right now in regards to the water levels being below the 70 parts per trillion, and that your residents can use it. Is there some type of alert or anything that's going to happen to notify these customers? Because we have quite a few that are participating via our YouTube. But again, having all your customers know about this very important update, I would say is very crucial in regards to them knowing that they could use their water. Can you give me an update on that situation?
Yes, Commissioner Tovar, Brian Thomas here. Yes, so while we are currently, below the 70 parts per trillion, unfortunately, we can't guarantee that it's going to stay at 70 parts per trillion. And that's why we still want the customers to take, advantage of the bottled water. In the event that we have one of our wells go down, which we don't expect, or in the event that Liberty Utilities is unable to continue providing us water, if they were to have an issue on their side, then we may have to go back to using those wells to keep the water demand to the customers. We are planning on sending out a notice to let people know, that we've made these adjustments and that the Air Force Base will be continuing to provide the bottled water in the meantime until the filtration system is fully operational. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is Steve Ween, Commissioner Tovar. The other part that you need to know is that we've been working on a notice to get out, and we are going to try to get it out as early as possible to let all of the customers know that we've taken the wells offline that had the elevated PFAS, so that the water that is going through their pipes is not at the elevated levels that are concerning. We're trying to get that notice out as quickly as possible. We've been working on it all day today, and we hope to get it out. It's a massive mailing with 1,500 plus customers. So if not Friday, hopefully Monday, that we can get that out the door.
Thank you. Another important question from one of your customers is, can our tap water be tested for these chemicals to see if our purification systems remove the concerns for our families?
Commissioner Tovar, this is Steve Ween. Yes, it can be tested just like any of the other water sources and samples, but it's $800 a test. So it's relatively expensive, which is why we are testing it at the well sites, and we're seeking with the Air Force to test it at our sampling. We have site sampling plans where we have to test water quality for various constituencies in water. And what we are more likely going to do is test the water in the distribution system so that we know that the water getting to the customers is at levels below 70 parts per trillion.
Thank you. Another question was, if this was an issue known since 2018, was the local real estate builders such as Richmond Homes notified of these levels? I believe they're referring probably to the homes that are being built right off of Bethany.
Commissioner Tovar, Steve Ween again. Yes, they were notified.
Okay. Are there any other ones, just a follow up from mine, besides Richmond Homes that are there? If you can, if you know of any of the other names or people that are listening, because I'm sure I'll get a question on other home builders as well too. But if you know them, please share those that you've shared this information with.
And let me just say, I'll turn it over to Mr. Thomas to give you the names of the builders. But again, I want to stress though that any new customer, any new developer, we provide this notice in the one of the first things we do along with our packets to say, hey, this is how you set meters. These are our policies and procedures. Here's this notice. Mr. Thomas, go ahead and tell which builders.
And that is correct. I believe the Richmond American Homes is the primary builder in our service area right now. There's also Hillstone Homes that's building some homes in our area as well, and also Cortland Homes.
Thank you. This one would be a question for both companies, for Liberty and Valley. Had both water companies been screening for these chemicals prior to 2016? And is all their testing data public facing anywhere?
This is Steve. Mr. Garlick, we'll allow you to go first if you want to answer that question. I don't want to monopolize the time.
In regards to our data, we have ADEQ has asked for our data, and we have provided the department that data a week and a half ago. So that has been done. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question? When did testing begin? I'm not hearing you, I'm sorry.
Oops, sorry, I had it on mute. Have both water companies been screening for these chemicals prior to 2016? And is their testing data public facing anywhere?
Yeah. So on the question regarding were we screening for this beforehand, like I stated early on, we became aware of the constituents of the US EPA as part of the UCMR 3 monitoring protocol, which was done between the years of, I believe, 2013 and 2015, in which they sampled our wells and notified us on May 11th of 2016.
Thank you. I'll hand it over to Valley Utilities.
Thank you again, Commissioner Tovar. That is correct. Valley was unaware of this issue until we were informed by Liberty about it. So we were not testing prior to 2016. And I concur with Mr. Garlick that the best place to get the information and testing results would be ADEQ. That would be the best agency for anybody in the public to receive that data.
I'll hand it over to ADEQ. Director, is there a particular area on the website where a customer can go to learn more information?
Yes. Is Trevor still with us? Trevor, you know the details of our data availability. Can you share that with the folks on the town hall, please?
Yes, absolutely, Misael. Thank you. So yes, we do have a PFAS webpage that will have what testing we have done, etc. I'm not sure yet that we have gotten up all of the information that we're receiving. We requested information from all 10 water systems that surround Luke Air Force Base, as well as asking Luke Air Force Base for their test data. As that comes in, we have not, I don't know that we've gotten that up yet, but we will work to do so.
Thank you, Trevor, and thank you, Director Cabrera. When you get that updated, please let us know for the commissioners, and I'll make sure to send that out as well too, so that residents can learn a little bit more about those levels as well. A question back for Valley is, will Luke Air Force Base be supplying water delivery to Tierra Buena customers?
Commissioner Tovar, at this time, because the levels of PFAS are below 5 parts per trillion, the Air Force is not providing bottled water to Tierra Buena customers.
Thank you. And knowing that each of you provided a commitment till 7 p.m., we're running about 3 minutes until then. And again, I want to thank everyone for being a participant today. And I think I'll end with this one question to see, if all can answer, and then we'll go into closing remarks. So another question from a resident is, what is effective treatment options that families can take?
Trevor, you can chime in, and certainly the water companies. One thing that I want to remind everyone of is that what Liberty Water and what Valley Utility Water Companies and the other 10 companies that we work with across the state on a voluntary basis are doing, it is actually above and beyond what's required by law. The law doesn't yet require this level of activity, but what we can see is a lot of people stepping up, doing the right thing. And so I want to commend Liberty Water, Valley Utilities Water Company, the other companies that we've worked with across the state, that even though there was not a legal imperative, they acted on their moral imperative. And I appreciate that. That's important. And it should be recognized because it doesn't happen all the time. As director of ADQ, I see all the time when facilities or companies don't do that. When we ask them about doing something that's important to do but not legally required, the very next meeting we have is with their lawyer. And that hasn't happened here. And so I want to commend everybody for doing that. In terms of what people can do at home, the answer is actually really, really simple. One, keep track of the consumer confidence report that your public water system has issued. They all have those on their websites. They also mail them to customers. And for these particular water companies, Liberty and Valley Utilities, keep track of what's going on there. We will also on our website post the data as it becomes available. So keep track of what's going on. Second is if you believe that the water may have levels above the health advisory level, then don't drink it. Leverage opportunities to get bottled water or other things. I will mention that make sure that your bottled water source does its testing. It's important to understand that public water systems are highly regulated. And there's monitoring that they have to do. Natural bottled water sources, make sure you understand that those natural bottled water sources are also being tested. And that's not DEQ that does that. That's more other federal agencies that have that work. The third thing to understand is that there's no evidence that showering or using water that have these chemicals in them is detrimental. What you want to do is avoid drinking and avoid cooking with the water. The last thing that I would recommend to folks is that if you have a health concern, if you have a health condition, please consult your doctor and talk with them about what you've learned, what the data says, and seek their recommendations, because that's the best way to address those issues. I have a brother and a sister who have battled different forms of cancer, and the solution is always consult your physician and follow their instructions. That is always one of the solutions to it. So protect yourself as much as you can, seek the information that's available, and then if you have a concern, consult your physician.
Thank you. I'll hand it over to Matthew from Liberty Waters.
Yes, thanks. I believe an RO system, reverse osmosis, ultimately will remove that. You would want to check to confirm that first. And remember, the granular activated carbon units that we put on our sites are very, very large, and they already removed that on behalf of Liberty. So when people are getting drinking water, we're already meeting that State Drinking Water Act requirement, as well as complying with the health advisory level or lifetime health advisory level that's been issued by the EPA, and we're below that 70 number. So there are Brita filters that are out there that do have carbon treatment on them. I don't know how effective they are. I have not tested those out. Maybe a little bit of research might be handy there, but those might be some options for you.
Thank you, Matthew. Handing it to Valley Waters.
Thank you, Commissioner Tovar. Let me first say, that's a great question. I really do appreciate that, because honestly, as we keep looking at the big picture, we're thinking, how are we going to test all of the water? But at the home level, I think many of us, I do, have a reverse osmosis system. And my understanding is that those usually take out constituents. On this one, I don't know if it does or not, but it's such a good question. I think we're going to follow up and try to figure out if that actually, which reverse osmosis systems or activated filter systems would work to take out PFAS, and call some of the manufacturers and see, because I'm certain they've run those tests at some point. So it's a great question. We appreciate it, and we'll get back and do a little further research and reach out to your office to supply the answer to the person who asked that question, but also get it out to the people in public, because it would be nice to know that we all have some peace of mind knowing that the RO system is helping with this issue. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We ran a little bit over on time, and we still had a lot of questions that were being submitted. So what I'm going to do is I'll make sure that all these questions go to our panelists today, and in making sure if they have an opportunity to follow up with them, and if they do, we'll make sure to post those as well too, because I know your time is valuable, and I appreciate you asking very important questions. And please know, looking forward to having additional town halls where we're able to educate, inform, where residents are able to ask questions as well too, and we'll look upon improving it as well. I do want to thank Director Tobin from the ADOA and Brandon here at the ADOA. They graciously hosted us here in their conference room, socially distanced, and had all the IT running so that we can deliver on a very smooth town hall for you. So again, thank you, Director Tobin and Brandon, for all of your help. It has helped immensely to educate our constituents. Also want to give a special thanks to our commissioners that have joined us. We had, for those online on YouTube, we had every single commissioner join in during this webinar, our town hall, have been listening and taking notes as well too. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we're hopeful to have another meeting in April to continue this discussion as well too. So very appreciative of their time and their commitment, and they too are very passionate about wanting answers and wanting to know what solutions, so that people are not worrying about safe and if their water is safe and reliable. And again, thank you, Director Cabrera, Trevor, Matt, Steve, and Thomas. Thank you so much for coming on and answering some very tough questions. And I'll email you some as well too that we didn't get to. But again, thank you everyone for your time, for tuning in. For those that are on and you have neighbors or family that didn't tune in, no, don't worry. We're going to have this recording available and up as well too. So we'll be sharing that shortly once we get everything up and on the commission's website as well too, and I'll also have it on social media. But again, thank you so much for your time, and again, we'll see you again at our next town hall. Thank you.
Thank you.